I got revenge on my ex by getting him fired from his dream job on 28F, was with my ex, Jason, 30mm, for 3 years. For most of that time, I genuinely thought he was the one. We met in college, and he swept me off my feet with his charm and ambition. Jason had this whole, I'm going to be a big shot corporate lawyer thing going on, and I was so in love, and stupid apparently, that I made his dream my dream. Fast forward to a couple of months ago. Everything seemed fine. Well, fine-ish. Jason was super busy with work, and I was picking up most of the slack at home, but I didn't mind. I wanted to support him, you know? I thought we were building a life together. Then one night, Jason went to take a shower and left his phone on the coffee table. Normally, I wouldn't even think about looking at it. I trusted him. Or at least I thought I did. But when a text popped up from someone named Ashley, I couldn't ignore it. I swear I wasn't trying to snoop. I just had a gut feeling, and let me tell you, my gut was right. The messages between them weren't just flirty, they were downright disgusting. Jason wasn't just cheating, he was treating me like some sort of placeholder. He told Ashley he was done pretending with me and would drop me as soon as he locked in this big job offer he was waiting on. He even called me useful, like I was some sort of tool to help him get what he wanted. I just sat there staring at his phone, completely frozen. It was like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I couldn't cry, couldn't move, couldn't even think. I just kept rereading those texts, hoping somehow I was misunderstanding, even though it was crystal clear. When Jason came out of the shower, I acted like nothing was wrong. I don't know how I did it, but I kept it together. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was too heartbroken. But the more I thought about it, about how he used me and planned to toss me aside, the more I realized I couldn't just let him get away with it. Jason was so obsessed with his career, so laser-focused on this dream job of his, that I knew exactly how to hit him where it hurt. I wasn't just going to let him walk away unscathed. After that night, things were weird. Jason didn't notice anything was off because, honestly, he was so self-absorbed. I kept up the act, smiling, cooking dinner, listening to him ramble about his job interviews. But inside, I was seething. A part of me wanted to confront him right away, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. Jason was the type of guy who could talk his way out of anything. He'd probably flip the script, blame me, and make me feel like the crazy one. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I started paying attention. Jason was interviewing with this huge law firm, like his absolute dream job. He'd been talking about it for months, how landing this position would set him up for life. Apparently the firm was super competitive, but he'd made it to the final round. And then something interesting happened. One night, while Jason was out with friends, probably Ashley, I got curious. I started going through some of the stuff he'd left lying around. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just trying to make sense of how someone I thought I knew could be such a liar. That's when I found it. An old USB drive in one of his desk drawers. Now, I know this sounds like snooping, and maybe it was, but at that point, I didn't care. I plugged it into my laptop, and what I found was, well, let's just say Jason wasn't as squeaky clean as he pretended to be. The drive had a bunch of files from his last job, including confidential client information that he definitely wasn't supposed to have. At first, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew Jason could be a jerk, but this was next-level shady. He'd taken these files with him when he left his last firm, probably thinking they'd give him an edge in his job search. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, debating what to do. Part of me felt guilty even thinking about using this against him. But then I remembered those texts, the way he talked about me, like I was disposable. That's when I made my decision. If Jason wanted to treat me like I was useful, fine. I'd be useful, but not in the way he expected. As the reality of what I'd just found sank in, I felt a knot twist tighter in my stomach. Part of me was still in disbelief. I had always known Jason was selfish, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I'd spent months supporting him, holding up his dream while he barely noticed me. And here I was, sitting with evidence that could destroy the one thing he cared about most. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, feeling like the weight of the decision was too much to bear. What if I was wrong? What if I was just angry and making assumptions? But then I remembered the texts, the ones where he referred to me as useful. He had already discarded me emotionally, and now I was seeing just how far he'd gone to secure his own future at my expense. I couldn't let it go. I had to do something. In that moment, I felt the bitterness inside me begin to fade. There was no longer any uncertainty. Jason had already crossed the line. He had stolen something that didn't belong to him, and I was about to return the favor. This wasn't about hurting him out of spite. It was about showing him that actions had consequences. If he wanted to play dirty, then so be it. I was going to make sure that his perfect life didn't come at my expense, but I wasn't going to just send the files off in a reckless rage. No, I was smarter than that. I had to make sure everything was airtight. The evidence had to be indisputable, something that would make his career crumble without a shadow of a doubt. I spent the next few days obsessing over the details. I researched the law firm he was interviewing with, looked up the HR contact and the person in charge of his hiring process. I even made sure to double-check the dates on the files, confirming when he had downloaded them and where they came from. The last thing I wanted was for him to weasel his way out of it by claiming it was a mistake or a misunderstanding. This had to be flawless. The guilt gnawed at me. What kind of person was I becoming? But I quickly pushed it away. I wasn't doing this because I was bitter or vengeful. I was doing this because Jason had left me no other choice. I had trusted him, and he had taken that trust and used it against me. Now I would use everything I had at my disposal to ensure he paid for what he'd done. I didn't want him to succeed. Not like this. Not with the lies, the manipulation, and the theft. He deserved to be exposed for what he really was. The plan had been set in motion, but the tension was unbearable. I spent the following days double-checking every detail, making sure the information I was about to send would not only expose Jason, but also ensure that there would be no way for him to wriggle out of the consequences. I wasn't looking for a half-baked revenge. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done. I wanted him to lose everything he had worked for, everything he thought he was entitled to. I decided to send an anonymous tip. There was no way I could risk my name being tied to this. Jason was still my ex, and I didn't want any chance of him coming after me, but I also couldn't leave it to chance. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right. So I wrote up a carefully worded email. Nothing too direct, but enough to make it clear that Jason had been unethical in his previous position. I didn't mention names at first. Instead, I referred to a candidate for the position he was currently interviewing for, a candidate who had stolen confidential documents from a previous employer. I included just enough of the files, along with the dates and timestamps that could link Jason to the stolen information. The evidence had to be irrefutable. The hardest part wasn't the email itself. It was the moment I hit send. The rush of adrenaline was overwhelming. My hands were shaking as I clicked the button. The seconds that passed afterward felt like an eternity, and for a brief moment I questioned everything. Was this too far? Was I really the person who would go to these lengths to punish someone for what they had done to me? But then I remembered the texts again. Jason had made it clear that I was just a means to an end. I had been there to support his career, to help him get ahead, and in return he treated me like I was disposable. No, I wasn't being petty. This wasn't some trivial act of revenge. This was justice. This was me making sure that he would never be able to walk through life unscathed by his actions. It wasn't long before the first crack in the facade appeared. I kept checking my email, my heart racing each time I saw a new notification pop up. Then, a few days later, I got the message I had been waiting for, a response from the law firm's HR department. The email was polite, but there was no mistaking the seriousness behind it. They thanked me for the information and assured me that they would be looking into it. And then, nothing. I spent the next week in a whirlwind of nerves. Was he going to find out? Was he going to realize what I had done? I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of him confronting me, accusing me of being vindictive and crazy. What if he found a way to weasel out of it? What if he somehow convinced the firm that it was all a mistake? But then, one afternoon, I got the news. Jason had been let go from the firm he'd dreamed of working at. They hadn't just rejected him. They'd told him flat out that his application was being withdrawn because of a serious ethical violation. He had been caught red-handed, and there was nothing he could do to get out of it. He'd lost the job he'd spent months preparing for, the one he thought would secure his future, the one he had treated me like a stepping stone to achieve. When I heard the news, a part of me felt satisfied, vindicated even. But there was something else too. A tiny voice in the back of my head told me I should feel guilty. Shouldn't I feel bad that I'd just taken away someone's livelihood? But then I remembered what Jason had done to me. How he had built his life around my love and support, only to toss me aside when he thought he could do better. The guilt disappeared, replaced by a strange sense of empowerment. The next day, Jason tried to call me. His number showed up on my phone, and for a split second, I thought about ignoring it. I could block him, cut him out of my life completely. But then, I had an idea. I picked up the phone, my heart racing, and said, "Hello? Are you kidding me?" Jason's voice was full of anger and disbelief. "What did you do? I know it was you. I don't care how you did it, but you've ruined everything for me." I listened to him rant, barely able to keep a straight face. "Jason," I said calmly, "you ruined your own life. I didn't do anything except make sure the truth came out." He scoffed, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you've won? You think you've made me suffer? You're pathetic. You've just proven you'll never be happy unless you ruin someone else's life." I couldn't help but laugh a little. "No, Jason, I'm happy because I finally have peace, and you'll never get that no matter how hard you try." The line went silent for a moment, and then I heard him slam the phone down. I didn't feel a shred of regret. I had done what I had to do, and it had worked. Jason's dream job was gone. He had lost everything he had worked so hard for, and I could finally breathe again. It wasn't that I wanted to destroy him. I just wanted to make sure he knew that the price of his actions wasn't something he could walk away from. Jason's reaction after the phone call didn't surprise me. He was always good at playing the victim, making me feel like I was the one who had wronged him. But this time, I wasn't the one running scared. He had no idea how deeply I'd planned this, or how much I'd let go of in order to make it happen. The following weeks were a whirlwind. The gossip around town started to spread. Jason's name was dragged through the mud. People I used to consider friends, people I thought had his back, began calling me to express their sympathy. They were shocked by what he'd done. "I had no idea he was like that," they said, astonished by the way Jason had deceived everyone. His ex-colleagues from his previous firm started distancing themselves from him as the details of his unethical behavior began to leak out. Even Ashley, the woman he had been so reckless with, started backing off. Word got around that she wasn't innocent in all of this either, though I had no idea what happened between them after his fall from grace. Part of me almost felt bad for him, seeing him get knocked down so hard. But then I remembered everything he'd put me through, how he had treated me like an afterthought while chasing after a job that would only have cemented his ego. The truth was, no matter how much I wanted to feel bad, I didn't. I had helped him build his empire, only to watch him tear it down. Now, he had to face the consequences. Jason lost more than just his job. He lost respect. His reputation was in ruins. He couldn't even land an interview at another law firm, not after what had come to light. He called me one more time, but I ignored his calls. I knew it wasn't to apologize. It was to beg for forgiveness, to ask me to fix it somehow. But I had no interest in hearing him out anymore. In the months that followed, I found closure. The weight of his betrayal no longer consumed me. I focused on my own life, on rebuilding the pieces of myself that I had neglected during our relationship. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I started to feel free. Was it cruel? Maybe. Was it justified? Absolutely. Jason had underestimated the strength I had left, and in the end, I'd shown him just how much I was capable of. I wasn't his to control anymore. I wasn't just useful. I was someone who could stand up for myself, someone who knew her worth. I don't know if Jason ever truly learned his lesson, but I did. I learned that sometimes letting go of someone isn't about forgiving them. It's about choosing yourself. And I'm choosing me every single time. So, was I wrong to take things this far, or did he deserve every bit of it?